Hi everyone, it's Plumb here to share another scrapbook process video with you. Today's layout that I am sharing is for a very special celebration. It is the created by Gwen's first YouTube birthday hop. Now, Gwen Ruck is a very dear friend of mine, and I was only too happy to join in when I was invited to join this hop. Now, for today's hop, what we're actually doing is we are doing a take on Gwen's signature style. Now, recently Gwen had a post on the Cocoa Vanilla Studio blog where she examined her signature style and identified 5 main elements that she usually includes in most of her layouts, which I just listed there. So they were a square photo, cut files, patterned papers, layered clusters, and stitching. So I am going to do my very best to create something using those elements from Gwen's signature style and see if I can do them justice. So let's get started. Now, I did start with a sheet of white cardstock for my layout, and I wanted to do a little bit of mixed media on it. Now, I didn't want to go too heavy on the mixed media because Gwen is not a huge mixed media fan. She does like to do a little bit of what we call clean mixed media, which is very Gwen style. So I thought I would keep things sort of toned down for this one and just do something quite subtle. So I chose a really subtle colour, which you can see there is Tattered Rose, Distress Oxide, and I just used the packaging technique to apply some of that to my cardstock. I then went in with the Rustic Wilderness and mixed that up with a little bit of water and just used a paintbrush just to add some subtle splatters over my background. And as far as mixed media on my background went, that was it. I left it like that, nice and clean, nice and tidy, and hopefully gets the Gwen mixed media tick of approval. So in hindsight, I probably should have actually made this area of mixed media on my background just a little bit larger because I did end up covering up most of it, as you do when you do mixed media, but I would have liked a little bit more colour visible, but you'll see what happened when I ended up doing this layout. So I started with this pattern paper, which is actually an Amy Tan one from the Late Afternoon collection, and I was using that as my background underneath my cardstock because I'd cut my cardstock down to measure 11 by 11 and I was using that as the background behind that just to provide me that nice green frame. So the photo I'm actually scrapping for this layout is a photo of my hubby and I that we took last month while we were sneaking off for a little lunch date just to celebrate our 20-year anniversary together. So there was a bit of greenery in the background and I thought I would try and draw that colour into my page. Now, as far as materials for the remainder of this layout went, I was very much inspired by a series that Gwen runs on her channel, which is on every Monday, and she calls it Maggie Holmes Monday. Now, Gwen is a very, what should I say, avid collector of Maggie Holmes collections, and she started this series as a way of busting through some of her Maggie Holmes collection stash. So I thought, being inspired by Gwen for this layout, I might dig into my own stash knowing that I have also quite a bit of Maggie Holmes stuff in my stash and try and bust through some of that for this layout. So there was a few bits and pieces that I was using. There's a couple of little bits of pattern paper that I had left over from previous projects, which were from the Marigold collection. But that was kind of it in terms of what I had for recent collections. So I had to go digging back through my stash, and you will see I have actually pulled in some older ones as well. So you can see I've got those papers there. Now that one, that peachy pinky coloured one, was actually back from the Bloom collection, and I do have quite a bit of Bloom in my stash, I noticed when I went looking for this project. So Gwen, I may have to join you on your Maggie Holmes Monday and bust a little bit of my own Maggie stash, I think. So what I was doing here was I was creating just, a layered mat for my photo. You can see that I've actually double matted this because I really wanted this sweet photo of us to pop off the page. I did use a square photo, so I've got a 4x4, which is exactly the same as Gwen tends to use quite often. 4x4 is her preferred size. And generally, even though I generally tend to work with a 6x4 or, smaller variants of, I didn't really have any trouble working with a square photo for this page. So in my stack there, I've actually got that green and white stripe paper was actually from the centre of that Amy Tan paper that I'd used as my background. I'm just using the reverse side of the print just to run that horizontal line across my page. I've got a bit of that floral paper from Marigold. I've also got that sort of bluey grey colour, which was also from Marigold. And then I've got that pinky peach colour, which was from Bloom. So I've layered up all my pattern paper pieces, and I hope I'm ticking that pattern paper box. Plenty of different patterns there. And I also tucked in a white doily into my stack there, just to give it a bit of softness and a bit of prettiness. And this is where things got really interesting. When I dug through my stash, what did I find? I found a pack of Open Book. Do you remember Open Book, the collection Open Book? I found a pack of Open Book chipboard frames. Now, I went on a real sort of chipboard frame, I don't know, bandwagon for a while, and there was a few left in this pack, which I obviously put away in my stash, totally forgot about, pulled them out for this and thought, yep, I can get a few of those used up. So sure enough, there's 3 of them on that page there. Now, one of the other criteria for this was to use cut files. Now, of course, I couldn't use any other cut file other than CutToYou cut files. So if you are unfamiliar with Gwen and her store, she actually designs and sells cut files from her store CutToYou, and that's where all of the cut files that I'm using on this page are from. So you can see that I've got that leafy one there, I've got a little floral one there, I've also got another sort of pair of flowers there. Now, they were just cut on some plain white cardstock, and I actually added some colour to them with another Distress Oxide. The one I'm using there is called Stormy Sky, and it's that beautiful sort of bluey grey colour. It worked really well with the palette that I was doing for this page. So what I will actually do is I will pop a link below to Gwen's cut file store, and if you haven't been over there and checked out her cut files, then I suggest you do. She has an amazing range of cut files available. I don't tend to work with cut files a lot, and when I do work with them, I don't work with them in the traditional sense of using a large cut file, which I back because, let's face it, I don't have the dexterity or the patience for that, and I applaud all of you that do. I tend to just use smaller cut files, and I use them in my layers, and I use them to add interest to my page, and Gwen has some real rippers, so make sure you get over and check them out. So I've actually got, now I didn't even wait for these to dry properly. They were still damp when I was putting them on the page, but I knew it wouldn't matter because I was adding things into my layers over the top anyway, so I just went with it. So you can see that I've added that sort of large open leaf one on the right. I've also got that pair of sort of open florals up in the top left, and I've got that single floral down the bottom. Now, generally, I tend to work with the rule of 3s. So I'm always looking for that visual triangle for my embellishment clusters, but Gwen has a slightly different tactic when she forms her embellishment clusters. Gwen forms what we like to call, or somebody has coined this phrase, and I think it's perfect for her, flowing clusters. So Gwen doesn't necessarily have 3 clusters on her page. She might have 4, she might have 5, whatever. But you will see the way that Gwen adds the embellishments to her page. She adds them in a way to draw your eye around the page. So your eye will naturally move from one cluster to another cluster. You will never find something on Gwen's page, a single embellishment stuck out in the wilderness all on its own. Everything touches, and I really love the way that she does that because it really helps make the design cohesive. Now, despite the fact that Gwen gets an amazing assortment of eclectic sort of embellishments onto her page, she can have all sorts of things on there that may not even necessarily be relevant to the topic, but the way in which she puts them on the page, they just work. So this is what I was trying to emulate with this page, and Gwen, I hope I did you justice. So I had initially started with my instinct of going with the 3 clusters, and then I thought, no, this is all about, you know, paying homage to Gwen's style. So I went back in with that Open Book ephemera pack, and I started to pull out some pieces. And all I did was start to build out the layers of my page it didn't necessarily have to have any sort of particular form or function where I was putting it, other than the fact that I tried to keep everything touching in fairly nice and tight to the photo so that you know, sort of supported that focal area, and a nice eclectic mix of things that not only formed layers on the page, but also would help your eye travel around to different points of interest on the page to support the photo. So you see what you think how I did with this, and I'll wait and hear what Gwen has to think of it. So I'm pulling in a mix of die cuts from the ephemera pack. I also had the open book, floral ephemera pack. So I had a few sort of flowers to pull in from that. But you can see how I am building those layered clusters, particularly that one to the right of my photo there. So I've got layers of patterned paper. I've got the cut file that I had coloured using the Distress Oxide. I've then got that chipboard frame over the top, and I like the way you can see through that chipboard frame to those layers underneath. Now I know as I'm adding things, I'm covering up part of the layers, but you can still see through them all the way to the bottom and see what's underneath. So I was just looking for a nice eclectic mix. I wasn't looking at being too pedantic about the colours, so long as I was sort of staying in a colour family that would work for this. So you can see I've got blues and I've got greens and I've got pinks, and I think it all just, they're nice and muted, and it all kind of just worked really beautifully together. So you can see I am adding all those die cuts, tucking them in. I haven't stuck my photo down yet because I am working over the top of those chipboard frames that sit in underneath my photo. Underneath my photo, you will see that I am also going to add some frayed gauze for texture. Now, this is something from my signature style, not necessarily Gwen's. However, I did want to still make this page very much me. And I think I did achieve a nice balance between Gwen's style and mine, and pull together a layout that worked in the end. So I've got a mix of sort of florals there. Some of them are foiled, some of them are glittered, vellum, cardstock, you name it. There I go with the frayed gauze. What else was on the list that I had to do? So square photo, tick. Cut files, tick. I still have a couple of little cut file butterflies to come. You'll see that I actually put those on at the end. And rather than colouring those, I did actually keep those white because I wanted to sort of go back to the beautiful white background that I had going on and just put that sort of little pop of freshness back in on the top of these layers. So yeah, square photo, tick. Cut files, tick. Patterned papers, definite tick. Layered clusters, there's definitely layers and there's definitely clusters there. Number 5, stitching. Okay, this is where things sort of went a bit pear-shaped and went off the rails. My intention with this layout was to stitch around the outside of the cardstock and stitch it down onto that pattern paper background I had there, and maybe add a little bit of stitching over some of my layers. But when I went to pull out my sewing machine, the bobbin was empty. It was late when I was scrapping this layout, and in the end I threw in the towel. So please forgive me. I actually ticked 4 out of 5 rather than getting the stitching on there. It didn't make it on there. But if you could just envisage what that stitching would have looked like around the outside of that layout, and next time that I need to use stitching, I'll make sure that my bobbin is completely full ahead of time so I don't have to bugger around with it. So a few little finishing touches I did on this layout. I added the title 20 in those gold thickers. I also added some doodlebug design, those little gold puffy hearts, which were really sweet. And I'm now just having a little flick through the Maggie Holmes Garden Party sticker book that I had, and just adding a few little clear stickers to the background just to help sort of balance out those clusters and just add that little bit of extra detail. Now, I think that about covers everything that I had on my layout. So, as I said, I kept the mixed media sort of nice and light and cleanish to suit Gwen. You can see I'm going in. The last thing that I put on here are those beautiful little butterflies. Gwen's butterflies are some of my most favourite cut files to use. I didn't have to cut any of these because I already have a whole heap of them pre-cut ready to go. So I really enjoyed playing along with this, and I hope that I have done Gwen's style some justice. I'll pop a link up the top here now. You can pop over and have a look at one of the videos on Gwen's channel. I hope it inspires you. Check out the list of participants below. Go and visit everyone. Subscribe, like, comment, all those good things. And thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time. Bye.